Welcome to Module 3, the magic of touch. So this module isn't about how to touch to bring your partner pleasure or things like that. It's about understanding what touch truly is. So first we need to look at the Tantric perspective, the yogic perspective, the spiritual perspective, that we are divine energy. We are Brahman. We are Shiva Shakti. We are all of that. And we are these physical bodies here on earth, in Maya, however you understand it. Our skin is our soul's connection to the outside world. So now imagine what happens, even right now, when you touch your own skin, right? You touch the skin, what happens? An energy signal is sent to the brain. In Tantra, they call it manas. And that aspect of the brain interprets this signal. What is it? Do I know what it is, right? But think of that. Just by touching, the skin is interpreting this, and I am interacting with the world beyond me. So touch can actually awaken our divine self. Touch can cause us to remember our soul, to connect with our infinite self, right? This is an energetic connection with our greatest self. However, in the world, we've often been handled in rough ways. And so because we have shut down a certain level of sensitivity in touch, we've shut down a certain connection to our greatest self. In this module, we'll talk about the armor that we develop on the skin, especially in the sensitive areas like the genitals, and how to resensitize them. Because imagine the power, the passion, the potential when this body, this skin, is resensitized to be sensitive, to imagine sensitive as the taste of a sommelier, of a wine tester, where they take a little bit of wine and their tongue and their taste buds are so sensitive. And when those messages go to the mind, to manas, there are thousands of possibilities. This is sensitivity. It's not the negative thing that we've been taught. To be sensitive means that we can deeply feel. And the more sensitive we are, the more open to all the possibilities in the universe that our divine self can feel. And so just to create kind of a container for this module, imagine what's possible when another human, someone you love, someone you trust, someone you have a heart connection with, touches you. What happens there? What if you are able to touch the sensitive, the truly deeply sensitive parts of our body? What if our combined sensitive areas touch and pulse and energize each other? What's possible? So suddenly touch isn't just this surface experience. Very often when we think about sex and we want to learn techniques, it's all about how do I touch in a way that is almost like pleasant friction, but it all stays on the surface. We don't really have to go deep to have that procreative style of sex that simply animates a vajra to the point of ejaculation, right? It's not necessary to go deep. So it's a very new way of making love that touch suddenly becomes a way of energizing each other's souls. And we're also going to talk about the polarities in the body. That all of a sudden, when you energize one being, that energy can pour into another being. And now you can actually create an energetic field together where you can ride the peaks and valleys of orgasmic states. So that's what we're going to talk about in this module. That's what we're going to explore. And obviously, once we get there, this too will be your homework in your intimacy journey. So let's talk about how to touch each other, right? We understand the philosophy, but how do we do it? If you've ever seen the movie City of Angels with Nicolas Cage, they have the most beautiful lovemaking scene in there. The premise is that Nicolas Cage is an angel who, of course, has never experienced touch or anything like that. And he falls in love with a beautiful woman, and he chooses to become human. They come together, and the first time she touches him, of course, he goes, because he's never been touched. And then suddenly she realizes, wow, he's never been touched. So she slows down how she touches him. And suddenly it changes her consciousness, it changes her awareness. And because he has so surrendered to her touch, she is now connected to him. And she feels this absolute ecstasy of being touched and touching all at the same time. And we're going to talk a lot in this program about the masculine and feminine. You know, the masculine is the one touching, not the man necessarily, but the one touching is the masculine, the one receiving is the feminine. And we'll talk about it in polarity, right? Like, so even in our talks today, that one will touch and the other will receive. And this is very important to develop this sensitivity. But what's very beautiful in this movie, and it will happen with you, or maybe it's definitely already happened, who knows, is that the toucher, as they touch and they become connected and conscious of the other person, you can start to feel what the person receiving feels. It's an amazing thing. It's almost like something slows you down and you start to feel a pleasure inside of you that you can't quite understand. And if this happens, I highly recommend just relaxing into it. The mind doesn't have to understand. Allow the body to feel whatever it feels, because the body is the connection to the soul, and the mind can only understand so much. It can only understand the physical world, the Newtonian world of cars and this and that and descriptions. But this is new, and it'll take time for our systems and our minds and our hearts to kind of catch up. Another wonderful part in this movie, City of Angels, is the doctor. It's before the angel has fallen to become human. And the doctor is eating a pear. And she doesn't know he's an angel. She thinks he's just a guy. And he says, "What does it taste like?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. It tastes like a pear." And he says, "But what does it taste like to you?" And she kind of looked at him, and she said, "Well, it's kind of rough, but sweet and tangy." And she kind of started having this whole description. And I mention this because sometimes it's really fun to imagine when you're touching someone that this beautiful human in front of you is this delectable fruit with all kinds of soft and juicy parts all over, but you've never touched it before. And you're exploring this wonderful being. There's something about wonder. There's something about knowing that you've actually never touched this person before. Even if you've made love with them for years, they're different today. Their system is different. Their consciousness is different. Their soul's expression is different. Even their skin is different. We are always changing and shedding and growing. So now imagine you're touching this person like you've never touched before. And this consciousness, bringing consciousness to touch, is so important because what it does is it allows the person receiving to relax. And as soon as they relax, the energy flows through their system more. In the same way that if you tense your bicep, the energy is constricted and constrained. But if you relax, the energy can flow. The challenge is that very often, by the time we're taking this course, we've made love a lot. We've had a lot of sex. And we may have patterns that we like. We like to touch in this way, or we like to do this. And it's very easy to drop into almost an unconscious pattern. As soon as the receiver notices that you are not conscious, it's like you can feel like they're touching and then suddenly they're just going through the motions. The person receiving stops relaxing. They become aware and the energy stops flowing. So it's just very interesting. If you're the one touching, just always stay conscious, always be aware. And if you find your mind going elsewhere, let your hands follow them. Continue moving. One of the challenges with touch is we get very focused on the genitals or just on this, or I really like this part of their body. But imagine that your hands are always moving, or your lips, or another part of your body, right? It doesn't have to just be the hands. But just imagine that you're always seeking. And if you find your mind wandering, shift what you're doing. Touch another part of them. And this is really important because we always want to stay present. And the more present the giver is, the more present the receiver can be. The other thing for the giver is to not think about what your touch is doing to the other person. Really focus on what, let's say you're touching with your hand. Focus on what your hand feels like as you're touching them. Feel what this feels like. And just explore this as opposed to sort of that goal-oriented that I want them to feel this way or I want that. Trust your body. Feel your hand. Connect with all these millions of nerve endings, but just really focus on how it feels in your hand. Similarly, think about kissing. This is skin, and we can communicate a lot with the lips. So similarly, if someone is kissing you, relax and feel it. And I don't mean you just have to be like a limp fish, like just lying there. You can move and be connected with them. But sometimes one's kissing, the other one's kissing, but no one's receiving the kiss, right? Imagine allowing someone to kiss you in the same way that you would allow someone to touch you. And similarly, when you're kissing, be aware of the feeling in your lips. Feel this wonderful feeling. And imagine when you actually are touching lips to another human, the level of intimacy this is. We take it for granted. But just to really stay in the lips, even if you're kissing, imagine that you're just lips. Like there's nothing else. You can be touching the rest of the body or doing anything, but but really keeping the focus on the lips. It's always fun to look for the sensitive places on our partner's body, you know, maybe the inside of the elbow to kind of play there. Because again, it's not about bringing them to orgasm or bringing them some kind of pleasure. It's about awakening their inner being. So now all of a sudden, you're touching them here and you're allowing your partner to kind of relax and let that energy feel throughout the body. Or maybe the sacrum, to allow touch in the sacrum and almost consciously send love, like touch with love. Imagine if we define love as connection. Imagine as you touch someone, you're literally sending love to them, not to get into your head about it like, I'm sending you love. That's something else. That's healing, that's energy work, that's something else. We don't want to be in our head, but just to know as you're touching them, you are loving them. And similarly, as you're being touched, to receive their love through their touch. And all of this may bring up emotions and all kinds of things, which we'll actually talk about in later modules. And it's all good, right? It just increases the intimacy and deepens the connection. But to really feel this love come into the sensitive places, maybe it's behind the neck, like I said, the sacrum, the belly, the breasts, the vajra. Who knows where the sensitive places are? But go on a little adventure and see what you can find. It's a very fun one. So now this redefines foreplay, right? Foreplay suddenly isn't about sexually stimulating each other. It's about creating the energetic connection between you. It's about helping each other land in this present moment. It's about allowing this transition from this focus in the outside world and worries and concerns of the mind and actually landing in the body, landing with this other person so that you can experience something together. Now, that being said, you can certainly do things and touch each other in ways that excite you, right? There's no rules. It's more like we're expanding the possibilities more than saying you can't do this. So maybe you do something in foreplay that excites your partner, right? That's super fun. But as we talked about in the previous module, about not wanting to get the fires too high that you end up ejaculating or blowing the flame out, you can get each other excited or become excited yourself, but then you kind of just relax into it. You sort of enjoy the excitement and let the excitement permeate your whole body because the goal isn't jumping off the cliff and ejaculation. The goal is experiencing an entirely new kind of pleasure and creating a deeper connection with each other. Because, of course, what can happen in previous ways of using foreplay is you sort of dive in and you get each other super, super sexually energized, right? And you may even have sex in that space. But are you actually connected? Right? Two highly energized sexual beings can have sex. That's easy. But if we rush through it, we may not be actually connected. And there are no rules. Sometimes maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want to just have crazy sex, and that's all good. And to be very open to that throughout this journey, and I'll mention this quite a few times throughout our 12 weeks because I'm offering something new and interesting, or maybe it's not so new, but it's different, right? But if through that journey of opening up and expansion, you suddenly have desires that you've never had before, and you see your partner and you're just like, I just have to have you now, do it. Allow the exploration, allow the adventure. And afterwards, maybe it was just the perfect thing for you guys. Because to remember that we're not doing this on retreat, we're doing this in life. And whatever comes up is perfect for whatever you guys are going through, right? So just a caveat that I'm offering one way of doing things, but the adventure is exploring how it fits and how you ebb and flow in life with it. So, and the last thing I want to mention is lubrication, because lubrication is often a part of people's lovemaking. And we'll talk more about, say, lubrication of the yoni or the vajra. And normally, if a woman is well loved and caressed and the lovemaking is slow, her yoni will naturally lubricate and there won't be anything necessary. But depending on what's going on hormonally, maybe that's a challenge, or maybe even you're going a bit quicker than slowly and you want to use a bit of extra lubrication. That's awesome. Find a safe and natural lubrication that works for you, and it's all good. You don't need a lot. And again, just to be cautioned that we aren't using lubrication in lieu of all this lovely connected caressing. Because, of course, historically, that was one of the number one reasons for lubrication. Because the man got all hot really fast, but women don't get hot that fast. There are times, but normally, for a woman to actually access her deep orgasmic potential, this takes time. But because of truly ignorance, right? Just people didn't know. She wasn't wet enough. And the kind thing was to put lubrication on her so at least it didn't hurt, and especially historically when in many societies people didn't even believe women could have orgasm or pleasure during intimacy. Lubrication was necessary because it just wasn't understood. But in our context, if lubrication's needed, wonderful. You can put a little bit on the yoni, you can put a little bit on the vajra, and it all just makes it so much lovelier.